Coming in Facebook, coming in YouTube. Getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants. We are like right on time right now, so I will need to, hello Harpsy, I see you over there on YouTube. We need to move right to the show over on Instagram. And as promised, I do have another study today. So I've done studies literally all week long. Every single Jimmy Rants this week has all been studies. So you're welcome if you wanted to stay on the cutting edge of nutritional health research. All right. So I got a study to talk about, and here we go. Does the speed at which you eat impact your blood sugar levels? I have a study all about that here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me, though. I am over on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We do go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thank you guys for being here today on the show. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page where Tracy just popped in. Thank you guys for being here today as well. And we also simulcast over here on my YouTube channel. I saw a whole bunch of people just say hi. Let's see. Harpsy, Linda, Deborah, Shirley, PJB, so many people coming in. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed a live, you can watch it on replay. We do put it up on IGTV. As soon as this is over, it goes right up onto IGTV. I put a few show notes in there. It goes on my main page on Instagram, and then you can watch it on demand, which a lot of people do. A lot of people also watch it over on YouTube. Just type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. And YouTube, you guys, is where I have another Jimmy Rants bonus episode for you today. So you might have seen a viral video of this doctor named Dr. Ben Tapper. So Ben gave a 3-minute speech before his local city council in Omaha, Nebraska, all about the masks. And he gave an impassioned speech and was talking about how we need to be showing people how to be healthy and not putting a mask on them. So I interviewed Ben. It was a wonderful conversation. It airs today on the Real Talk podcast, so you can listen to that later on when it airs at llvlc.com or wherever you listen to podcasts, or as soon as this Jimmy Rants is over, go on over to YouTube and you'll find it on my main page, Dr. Ben Tapper. So that's the show that we have as a Jimmy Rants bonus for you here today. So go check that out. And then finally, pop on over to the official website of this show. It is jimmyrants.com. You can see all the past episodes there. And while you're there, if you love what I do, if you love me, so many people write to me and like, I love what you do. You keep us on the cutting edge. I'm just grateful for you. Well, one way you can show your gratitude is to either give a donation one time through the PayPal link at jimmyrants.com or to become a Patreon member by doing a monthly donation. Either one of those would be greatly appreciated. Okay, you guys, I have yet another study to share with you here today. I don't know what it was about this week that I decided to do all studies. Tomorrow is still Ask Me Anything, so we won't do a study tomorrow, although I do have a couple of small studies I want to just glance on and I'll tell you about tomorrow. But every single day this week, I have done some new nutritional health study that has come out, most of them within the last week. The one yesterday was back in July, but still in the realm of study, that's brand new. And I have another one from September that I'm going to share with you here today. But I felt like there was a lot of science that came out. Let's get it out there. That's why I created Jimmy Rants. So did you guys grow up in the culture where if you started eating your food too fast, your mom said, slow down? Did you have a mom like that said, slow down, slow down? Mine did, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm a fast eater. I don't know why I have a fast eating kind of mentality. I've just always been a fast eater. You know, and you have those other people that tend to be very slow eaters. And when you're at a restaurant, you're all waiting and looking at your watch while they're still eating their meal. So I think there's extremes to both ends of that. And even like within the realm of trying to lose weight and trying to get healthy, there are protocols in place where people say, okay, take a bite, chew it like 30 to 40 times, set the fork down, enjoy it, absorb it, blah, blah, blah. Which I think in general, that kind of thing is probably better than not better. But now we have evidence. This study I'm going to tell you about today, we have direct evidence that eating fast actually raises your blood sugar more than eating the same food, just eating it slower. So for all you fast eaters out there, you want to listen up, and this is as much for Jimmy Moore as anybody. If you eat fast, according to this new study, it will play a significant role on your blood glucose going up. You know, and sometimes eating fast isn't necessarily evil. You've got a kid that's screaming and you're trying to get to them. You've got things to do, people to see, and you eat fast. Hopefully after me reading this study today, it will make you rethink that strategy and maybe plan that if you can't eat your meal at a normal pace, maybe don't eat until you can eat at a normal pace. So if you just joined us, that is what we're about to go over here, is this new study. It's in the medical journal Nutrients. Looks like it was published September the 10th, so not that long ago. Came out really recently. And the name of the study, Eating Fast has a significant impact on glycemic excursion in healthy women. So this is especially important for women to pay attention to because they studied women in this. It's a randomized controlled crossover trial, which I've done a crossover trial before talking about it. Basically, a crossover trial is where you have one group and you have another group, and then at the end of the protocol time for those groups, you switch and they go the other one. So looks like the researchers are out of Japan at the Kajiyama Clinic and Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine. They're from all over Kyoto University. So Japanese researchers. All right, so let's get into this. Thanks for being here today. Introduction. It has been demonstrated that self-reported eating at a fast speed will lead to weight gain, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. All of those have been found in epidemiological and cohort studies. Eating fast encourages a higher energy intake by increasing food stimuli, hunger, and the desire to eat. My mama used to say, well, you know, if you eat fast, it takes your brain 20 minutes to realize when you're full. So if you eat all the food on your plate within 10 to 15 minutes, your brain hasn't caught up to the time that... Did your mom give you that spiel as well? I wonder how true that is. Although you might find anecdotally that when you're out with friends and you're having a meal, for example, out at a restaurant, back when people went to restaurants together, that when you're having conversation with someone, maybe you find you got a lot of food left on your plate. That's why the little doggy bag, taking it out and taking it home with you. Whereas if you had that exact same meal at home and there's nothing to, you know, you don't have great conversation with your family, there's nothing to slow you down. I wonder how much accuracy that is. We had a lot of things like told to us by parents, and now you're a parent possibly, and you're telling your kid, well, you know, it takes 20 minutes to digest that food fully, so if you eat within 10 to 15 minutes, you don't know when you're actually full. Have any of you pulled that with your kids, or did you have it pulled on you when you were a kid? My mama did. Eating fast encourages this higher energy intake because of all the things, increasing food stimuli, increasing hunger, and a desire to eat. However, in epidemiological and retrospective reports, eating speed was entirely assessed by self-reported questionnaire. In other words, they relied on the study participants to tell them, did you eat fast? Did you eat moderate? Did you eat slow? You ask a fast eater, do you eat fast, moderate, or slow? They might say moderate, or they might even say slow, because what does slow mean? To a fast eater, slow could be, but is that slow or is that fast? I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. So their point is it's all been subjective. There's been no standardized of what fast and slow eating means. It might lead to report bias. And remember, in these studies, participants often tell the researchers what they want to hear, not what actually happens. And eating speed may lack any kind of objectivity. It has to, leaving the effect of eating speed on glycemic response unclear. So if they're trying to see what impact is the speed by which you eat food having on your blood sugar, you can't really do it with a self-reported questionnaire, which is why doing it in a clinical setting under a randomized controlled trial is the only way to really measure this quantitatively. Additionally, an interventional study of the effect of eating speed on glycemic response has not been investigated. This has never been done before. Therefore, the rate of eating speed should be evaluated objectively, not subjectively, by an interventional randomized controlled study, which is what they did in this study that we're reading from. And again, if you just joined us, I am reading from a study published in the journal Nutrients. September 10th, 2020 is when it came out. Eating fast has a significant impact on glycemic excursion in healthy women. It's a randomized controlled crossover trial, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty. We're reading the introduction, getting into the nitty-gritty next. So the aim of this study was to evaluate the acute effect of different eating speeds on glycemic parameters. So they want to see in real time, what is that speed of eating doing to your blood sugar levels? So they tested young, healthy women using a CGM. So the Freestyle Libre is what they had. So that's that little device that goes in the back of the arm. Some people put it on their stomach, most people on the back of their arm. And on a whim, you can see what's happening to your blood sugar. That's how they tested blood glucose. It's a new technology among continuous glucose monitoring systems. Does not require regular capillary glucose, finger prick. I've told you about CGMs. You know all about them. The sensor inside of this is actually called a flash glucose monitor. Stores the interstitial fluid glucose levels for every 15 minutes for 14 days, and then reported to be quite accurate and effective. So they're telling you, okay, we're gonna do this as a study. We're gonna have these people in-house. We're going to observe how fast they eat. We're gonna see in real time how their blood glucose is gonna go. We need some good technology. And so the Freestyle Libre Pro is what they used for this study. All right, so let's get into the materials and the methods for this study. Who are the participants? University students were recruited from Kyoto Women's University in Japan after being informed of the study requirements. 21 participants were enrolled in the study and 2 participants were excluded because of the discontinuation of the study protocol of eating speed. So they didn't do it, is what they're saying. So the study was conducted from December of 2019 through February of 2020. The volunteers had no known history of any metabolic disease. In other words, these should be pretty insulin sensitive people. And of course, what we're going to find out in this study is of insulin sensitive women, relatively young women. So whatever effects we see from the speed of eating in these insulin sensitive young women, think about it on an nth degree scale for people that are older and more insulin resistant. So what they find in this study is going to have an application of an amplified degree for those of us who have metabolic disease. None of the volunteers were pregnant. None of them were smokers. None had an eating disorder. None desired any weight loss or needed any weight loss. None followed any special diets over the past 6 months before the study. And they refrained from taking medications and supplements that would affect their metabolism. So if they took something that would affect their blood sugar, like metformin, that's a drug, or like berberine, which would be a supplement that would impact the blood sugar, they had them come off of all that stuff. The purpose, design, and risks of the study were explained to each of the participants, and written informed consent was obtained prior to the study. So let's get into the study design. This is always key, guys. When they do a study, You want to know, okay, is it a good design? Is it actually going to show what their theory is trying to test? So let's take a look. The study was designed as a randomized controlled two-treatment crossover within participant clinical study to avoid the characteristic differences of two groups in different eating speed. The study protocol involved human subjects, was approved by the Ethics Committee of Kyoto Women's University, according to the guidelines laid out by the Declaration of Helsinki, registered in Clinical Trials Registry, just like all the things that happen here in America. All of the participants consumed exactly the same test meal for 2 days, which were consumed at two different eating speeds during the 6-day study period. Can you imagine if you're naturally a slower eater and they say, okay, go, and they like start a stopwatch and say, okay, you have this amount of time to get all that food consumed? Or the opposite. Let's say you're a fast eater and then they say, okay, you have 8 minutes to get that meal in, go, and you're like, like you don't want to get down to the last bite and you got 3 minutes left. So they truly had to like time them, and even probably had coaches there going, okay, you're eating too fast, slow down, and then the inverse on the fast one. All right, you have to eat all this food in 3 minutes, go. Whoa, and so eating, and then, okay, you got to pick up the pace because I need you to be done with that last bite by the time we get to the end of the stopwatch. That would have been hilarious to watch, especially for the naturally slow eaters having to do the fast eating, and then vice versa, the naturally fast eaters having to slow down. The study protocol was explained to each participant prior and during the study. The participants were reminded to follow the protocol by phone for thorough eating procedure control. The participants wore their glucose monitors, the flash glucose monitor, on the back of their left arm for 6 days under the physician's management. Although the flash glucose monitor can start recording the glycemic parameters 1 hour after wearing, in order to obtain stable and accurate glycemic data, we did not start until the 4th day. This is important, guys. So when you put in a CGM, if you've never worn one before, what happens is you get the little sensor and you pop it in. As soon as it goes in and you sync it to your phone or whatever the reader is, it takes 1 hour for it to sync up. Okay, so once it syncs up, you don't want to start testing right away. You want to make sure it's actually accurately testing your blood sugar. So that's what they did. They waited till day 4. They probably did a few test finger pricks just to make sure that the reading of the blood sugar with the Freestyle Libre Pro was identical to what you would get with a typical blood sugar meter. And so waiting till day 4 was smart. I love that that's in the design. On the 4th day, participants were instructed to consume 3 meals, either very quickly. All right, here's the timing. 3 meals, 10 minutes they had to eat. Or very slowly, 3 meals, 20 minutes they had to eat. On the 5th day, they were instructed to consume each meal at the opposite speed. So on the 4th day, they did fast. So then the 5th day they do slow, and then vice versa. The 4th day you did slow, 5th day you did fast. The order of the 2 eating speeds was determined at random prior to the study. The eating protocol, the sequence of the dishes consumed, and the time required to consume them was defined in slow eating as vegetables for 7 minutes, main dish for 7 minutes, rice and bread for 6 minutes for a total of 20 minutes. So that's interesting. They had them eat each course of the meal at a certain speed. They had to have had somebody going, okay, you got to pick up the pace. This is supposed to be the fast one. Come on. It would have been hilarious to have that on video. Maybe they took video. That would be fun. In the fast eating, the dishes in the identical meal were mixed to be consumed in a total of 10 minutes. So they didn't make them do each one when it came to the fast one. They said, okay, just get it in. Because 10 minutes to have a 3-course meal in 10 minutes where they're having the main dish, which I assume is some kind of a meat type of dish, vegetables, and then rice and bread. We know how eating some of those things might start expanding in the body, and so just that would just be hilarious. But they mixed it all together with the fast eaters. They had to get it all in 10 minutes. On the 6th day, they removed the flash glucose monitors. The data recorded in it was extracted, and daily glycemic parameters were compared within participants between 2 days of consuming identical meals at different eating speed. So it's just fascinating how they designed this study. So they had a nice little chart that shows the design and how they basically did the protocol. Wearing the flash meter, they ate on the 2nd and 3rd day, remember before the testing period, 7 a.m., 12, and then 6 p.m. Then on the testing days, the 4th day, 7, 12, 6, whether you were the fast or the slow group, and then the 5th day, same thing, 7, 12, 6. And then they had breakfast the 6th day, and then they removed the flash meter before noon. So that's the protocol. All right, so let's take a look at the test meals. What did they do? Now, this wasn't a keto study, so don't freak out with some of the foods that they ate. But the things that they found out about this was pretty fascinating. All right, so you see the composition and macronutrient content of the test meal. It's a frozen box of fried fish and vegetable at lunch. It's a gluten meat steak. What the heck is a gluten meat steak? Is it one of those like processed meats that they then added gluten to? Like, give them steak. Like, I suppose if they're trying to test blood sugar, adding gluten to the meat would actually be beneficial, so they could see if there was a spike, because you want to see a little bit of a spike. If you ate foods that didn't spike glucose, it would be a very boring study. So those of us that eat keto and carnivore, this study may not have applicability, total applicability, but for those who eat carbohydrates, it would. Gluten meat steak and vegetables at dinner were purchased at Tokatsu Foods from Yokohama, Japan, and they were provided to the participants by the researchers. All the rest of the food was prepared by the participants according to a brochure that was given to them by a dietitian. The frozen box lunches for lunch and boxes of food for lunch and dinner were kept in the freezer until they ate them. Test meals of 200 grams of boiled white rice and 90 grams of white bread were measured exactly and heated by each participant before consumption. Throughout the study period, they were allowed to consume, other than the test meals, water, green tea, tea, and coffee without sugar or milk. The participants were requested to avoid any alcohol and excessive physical activity for 2 days prior to the study and during the study. Again, exercise would impact blood glucose, so they wanted to negate that as a confounding variable. Each participant was instructed to follow this study protocol precisely during the study period, and the collected records of eating speed and the amounts of foods that were assessed for compliance of the study protocol by the dietitians in the study. The dietitians excluded any participant who did not follow the protocol, which we already talked about. 2 of the participants did not follow the protocol. It's hard, like when you're used to eating fast and you're told to eat slow, and vice versa. If you're a slow eater and you're told to eat fast, how do you do that? Like, how do you switch that off in your brain? All right, so what did they measure? 2 weeks before the study, anthropometric measurements of blood samples of participants were collected in the morning after fasting overnight. Blood samples were examined. Fasting plasma glucose concentrations were measured. Hemoglobin A1C, the A1C levels were determined by a high-performance liquid chromatography. The incremental area under the curves for glucose after breakfast, lunch, and dinner were calculated from the baseline. They basically wanted to see, okay, what's normal for these people? So that way, once they have a baseline, then when they do the intervention, then they know what to compare it to. The parameters to evaluate glycemic variability were the mean amplitude of these glycemic excursions and the standard deviation. So again, they're trying to see what's normal for their blood sugar, and then when they eat slow and when they eat fast, what changes from the normal. These glycemic parameters were compared within participants for 2 days of consuming the same meal at different speeds. Okay, Sample size and statistical analysis. So a sample size of 14 participants in the current study has a 95% power to detect 5% difference in postprandial glucose concentrations. That's just a fancy kind of phrase for it's pretty darn accurate what they found. 21 participants enrolled. The primary outcome was postprandial glucose concentrations. Secondary outcomes were some of these other effects on the glucose. We could not confirm normal distribution for all glycemic parameters, so we performed a pair of comparison ones using another test, and it was considered statistically significant. The results are expressed as a mean standard error of the mean. Unless otherwise stated, all analysis were performed using this thing called SPSS Statistics, version 22 software from IBM. The composition and macronutrient content of the menu of the test meals are shown below. So let's take a look. For breakfast, they had 437 total calories. Protein was 18 grams. Fat was 12 grams. Carbohydrates, 70 grams. And then fiber of that was 6. So again, you're trying to test the effects of glucose. If you don't eat things that spike glucose, how would you see the effects? So I do appreciate that they made an effort to make sure it had ample amounts of carbohydrate in there so you can actually test what you're looking at. Lunch was 624 calories, 25 grams of protein, 11.5 grams of fat, 104 grams of carbohydrate, and 8 grams of fiber. Dinner was 689 calories, which consisted of 23.5 grams of protein, 17 grams of fat, 107.5 grams of carbohydrate, 7.8 grams of fiber. So the total for the day, and remember they ate the exact same meal 2 consecutive meals, just to see what the impact would be. So the total was 1,750 calories for the day, 67 grams of total protein, 41 grams of total fat, 282 grams of total carbohydrate, and 22 grams of fiber. So remember, white bread, or here's the detail of all the foods. White bread, tomato, broccoli, milk, strawberry jam that was sugar-free. Well, at least they took the sugar out. I don't know why they made that one sugar-free when they got a crap load of other carbs. Boiled white rice, frozen lunch box of fried fish with vegetable, tomato, spinach, boiled white rice, this is dinner, tomato, and frozen box of gluten meat steak with vegetable, spinach, and fried tofu. Yeah, I think I'll pass on this study. All right, so what were the results of all this delectable food where they were testing the blood glucose? The results were based on 19 women, their average age 21 years old. So they were very young women, BMI of 20.5, which again, very healthy BMI. Let's see. The postprandial glucose profiles for 2 eating speeds are demonstrated in figure 2 below, which we'll get to in a second. So what they looked at was the glucose 2 hours after dinner for the fast eating, which was 10 minutes. And what they found, all were significantly higher compared to those with the slow eating, which was 20 minutes, although the mean plasma glucose concentration showed no difference between the 2 days of fasting and slow eating. So overall, no difference. But in the right after it happened, after the meal, they saw this huge jump with those who ate the faster meal. So let's take a look at that data a little bit closer. All right, so after breakfast, the fast eaters saw their glucose go up 2.3, which again, they're doing millimoles. So I'm going to try to do this in my head off the top of my head. I should have done the translation before I got on here. Let's just put it this way. 2.3 is probably about a 50 to 60 point spike. And then the slow eaters saw a 1.7, which is probably a 25 to 30 point spike. If those numbers are wrong, I'm sorry, but I think the relative change and the relative difference is what's most important here. After the lunch meal, fast eaters saw their blood glucose go up by 4.06. The slow eaters saw their blood glucose only go up by 3.13. Again, this isn't in American terms, this is in the international terms where they use millimoles. That's pretty significant there. And then the last one was the dinner. Fast eaters went up 3.87 in their blood glucose, and slow eaters 2.27. Okay, so they translated it here at the 2-hour postprandial. They translated it into numbers you would understand. Postprandial glucose, 2 hours postprandial, which remember, by 2 hours postprandial, you should be back to baseline. So when you're testing blood sugar, you test at baseline, right? And then you test at increments. Some people like to do like 30-minute increments. If you do 1 hour postprandial, that tends to be the height of your spike in your blood glucose. And then if you test at 2 hour postprandial, it should be back to the baseline again. So if you start at 85, 1 hour postprandial is 115, and then 2 hour postprandial, you're back to like 86.7. That's normal. That means you handled it well. And remember, all the young ladies in this study, highly insulin sensitive, they don't have any metabolic disease, they ate a crap load of carbohydrate, but they should be able to handle it as insulin sensitive young women. So let's take a look at what happened. 2 hour postprandial. Glucose for breakfast started at 111 and went up 10 points, which I think is pretty good. There's 70 grams of carbs in that meal. And then that's 2 hours postprandial. So we don't know what happened at 1 hour. This is 2 hours postprandial. So it went up 10 points from baseline. That was the fast eater. The slow eaters started at 107 and it was up 8 points from baseline. Not real statistically different there. Lunch, fast eaters, so they had 104 grams of carbohydrate in this meal. At 2 hours postprandial, 265 was their blood sugar, which was 28 points higher than baseline. That can't be right. Anyway, 265 was the fast eater, 216 was the slow eater. Remember, they ate a crap load of carbohydrates, 104. At dinner, they had 108 grams of carbohydrates, and their blood sugar got up at 2 hours postprandial to 256. But the slow eaters only 128. So significant difference based on the speed. Now, some would argue, okay, wow, look at that blood sugar going way up there. Even these so-called metabolically healthy young ladies, guys, this is how insulin resistance develops. This is how having that blood sugar abnormality over a period of time will eventually manifest as type 2 diabetes, will eventually manifest as having higher BMI, but they're 20 years old, 21 years old, they're not there yet. They will be there if they keep eating meals like this every day. But fascinating, right? Like, same meal, and all they did was eat one of them within 10 minutes, and then the other meal within 20 minutes. And in every single case, the breakfast was negligible, so we'll call that a wash. But the other two, it was a 50-point difference, and then the dinner meal was a good 130 points difference in their blood glucose response. Would you have imagined that the speed of which you eat food would impact your blood sugar like that? I don't think many people would. Now, maybe some diabetologists would, but I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so in the discussion of the study, to the best of our knowledge, this is the very first interventional study to investigate the association between eating speed and glycemic parameters using a blood glucose monitor, CGM. The results of this study suggest the possibility that fast eating will induce a higher postprandial after eating glucose concentration and higher daily glycemic excursions in young, healthy women. So these daily glycemic excursions, like, think about it. One thing we didn't talk about when they had their meals, they saw a blood glucose spike at that meal in the morning, and then they saw a bigger spike. Like, they ate the meal at 7 a.m., By 9 a.m., it was still kind of up there in the over 100. By noon, it was pretty high, and then it went higher. And then you ate at 6, like they were literally keeping their blood sugar levels high all day long. Numerous studies reported that fast eating was associated with increased body weight and overeating, elevated blood pressure, and fasting blood glucose concentration, increased insulin resistance, which we're seeing a sign of here, and an increased risk of impaired glucose tolerance and type 2 diabetes. Again, if they kept eating this way, regardless of how fast you eat, but if they ate slower, I guess it took longer for the type 2 diabetes to develop. But if you ate fast and you ate that many carbs, it would eventually turn into type 2 diabetes pretty quick. It has also been pointed out the association between fast eating and lipid abnormality, because get this, guys, they didn't test it in this study, but it's been known in other studies that it will raise your blood triglycerides and your blood HDL, which the HDL, generally recognized as a pretty good thing, but the triglycerides, that is the truly bad fat here. It is important to mention that the extent of eating speed in these previous reports was all subjective, so this was the first time they ever measured it within a clinical setting. The interventional method used in this present study is expected to evaluate objectively what effect the eating speed had on the glycemic parameters. On the other hand, several reasons may be that eating slow may exert its beneficial effect by enhancing diet-induced thermogenesis, increasing serum adiponectin concentrations, and suppressing endotoxin and non-esterified fatty acids, as previously reported. It has been reported interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6, which are both involved in insulin resistance development, are decreased in those people who eat slower, indicating that there must be a link between eating speed and glycemic parameters that we observed in our study. Moreover, eating slowly may influence gastrointestinal satiety hormones, things like ghrelin and PYY, peptide tyrosine, which control appetite and influence how much food you eat, suggesting that modifiable eating pattern behaviors actually regulate your hormones as they respond to food. So imagine that. Mom was right when she said, slow down. And it wasn't about anything more than your body's going to respond better if you slow down. I think behavioralists, psychologists that try to get people to slow down their eating patterns, this is important information here, because now we have quantifiable reasons why you want to slow down. And maybe you're one of those keto carnivore people that tends to eat fast. And you still have elevated blood sugar levels. I wonder if you slowed down and was deliberate about making it a point to slow down. I have tried very hard to slow down my eating, and I think I have slowed it down because I've naturally been a fast eater for so long that slowing it down will have a profound impact on you. It's definitely worth an N=1 for you to try it on your own. I would even say replicate this test, but do it with ketogenic or carnivore foods. You could do that at home. You don't need a study to tell you this. You could see what happens to you. I do have a CGM. I might do this study just to kind of see how it would respond in Jimmy Moore. In contrast, Shea and others reported that eating speed could not be explained by the changes in meal-related hormones. In their study, eating breakfast slowly, they did it over 30 minutes, versus quickly, which was 10 minutes, did not affect the postprandial gut hormone response to the hormones ghrelin, GLP-1, PYY, nor hunger and daily food consumption. In our study, for glucose at breakfast and lunch demonstrated no difference, possibly between the secretion of the hormones might not be affected in the daytime. So that's interesting. They're saying that big spike that happened at night, this is another thing too that's kind of an interesting variable. When you eat the meals and the response to the speed by which you eat those meals at the time of day you eat those meals plays a difference. What I would have loved to have seen as well is how did their sleep do after that big spike of glucose at the end of the day. That would have been really interesting as well. Additionally, another possible reason was that the energy ratio of dinner was large, so 40% of the calories for the whole day were consumed at dinner time, compared to breakfast, which was 25%, and lunch was 35%. We employed this energy ratio to design the 3 test meals according to the general meals of what the average typical Japanese diet looks like. However, as there are controversial reports in association with gastrointestinal hormones and eating speed, the mechanisms underlying the association with eating speed and its metabolic response needs to be verified in other studies. The strength of this study is that it's the first randomized controlled crossover interventional study to explore the association between eating speed and the glycemic responses in healthy Japanese women. Postprandial hyperglycemia, that's high blood sugar, and high MAGE are associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease in people with and without diabetes. I wonder, guys, they went straight from one day of having the slow eating right to the next day of having the fast eating, and then vice versa. There was no washout day. I wonder what would have happened if they washed out, because you know if you have a higher glucose from the day before, there will be a carryover effect to the next day. And especially with as much carbohydrate as they ate, I wonder if better study design would have been have them eat on a Tuesday, for example, and they eat the fast, and then the other half eat the slow, and then you wait a whole week and then go back to on the next Tuesday, then have them do the crossover. No washout period. I wonder if it had any kind of effect on the results. It would had to have had some kind of effect, you would think. It is reported that the large blood glucose fluctuation not only increases tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 6, and platelet aggregability, but also decreases endothelium-dependent vasodilation even before the onset of diabetes. In other words, all of these things start to diminish and get worse long before you get diabetes. Therefore, decreasing postprandial glucose may reduce the risk of developing impaired glucose tolerance, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease in people who don't even have diabetes. Some limitations to the study. Listen to this. This is always good. First, the present study is an acute interventional study. Therefore, it's unable to translate all of these effects on glycemic responses to long-term benefits. So acute meaning they just did it in that one little short 2-day period. It's not really showing anything. Could they do a vacillating back and forth between slow and fast, slow and fast, slow and fast for like a period of 2 weeks? Now that would be interesting. The Freestyle Libre gives you data for 2 weeks. Why would you not try to push it all the way to the 2 weeks? That would be interesting. They also used all young women. What if they did a cross-section of the population? Young, healthy women. If they did a cross-section of the population of young, middle-aged, older, young who have metabolic syndrome, older who aren't sick, like it would be interesting if they did like a mix of people. But I'm glad they've stuck with healthy, because if this is happening in healthy people, I want you to think about this. If this is happening in healthy young women, what's happening in unhealthy older men and women? That's the thing to ask yourself. So they did acknowledge that the participants consisted only of young, healthy Japanese women who experience a diet and lifestyle specific to Japan. Therefore, we would be cautious to applying the results to individuals of other genders, race, genetics, lifestyle, and people who have diabetes. Third, because how the metabolism is regulated by eating speed is not really fully understood yet, the role of insulin, incretin hormones, cytokines, and endogenous glucose production on significance of eating speed really isn't clear yet. What they have done with this study, you guys, is created a hypothesis. And I really hope an American researcher especially takes this and applies the American diet to this study, because I think they would get far more profoundly statistical results. The Japanese diet is relatively healthy for them because that's culturally how they eat. But for Americans on a standard American diet, I think you would see far greater disparity in the blood glucose between eating fast and eating slow. Fourth, the eating protocol between fast eating and slow eating in this study was not exactly the same, leaving the possibility that the difference in the eating protocol contributed to the results we got. And the fifth limitation, psychological conditions such as satiety may have influenced the glycemic response, but we did not measure the extent of satiety between the days of fast and slow eating. One other thing they didn't do is, were any of them under stress? Because when you're stressed, you will have a blood glucose response. I think they need to self-report if they had any kind of stress in the midst of the study time period. It would impact that blood sugar. It has been reported that eating fast tended to increase the amount of food intake because it suppressed satiety. So there's another reason to slow down. Make sure that you're chewing your food good enough and eating slow enough, because when you eat fast, you can't feel that satiety signal kicking in. Just like Mama said, Mama was right all along. The sixth limitation was the possibility that participants may not have followed the protocol strictly, although we had thoroughly and repeatedly explained and instructed them prior to and during the study to maintain high adherence. Therefore, further study will need to explore the comparisons when the meal sequence of vegetable, main dish, and rice and bread are followed. The disadvantage of eating fast shown in this study brings the possibility of raising the risk of type 2 diabetes and obesity amongst young, healthy individuals. Eating slowly is potentially advantageous to public health because the modification of eating speed could be cost-effective to help you lose weight and control your blood sugar. Dietary education on the benefit of eating slow could be a simple way to reduce excessive food intake, since eating fast leads to higher energy take and lower satiety. It's a great idea that if it's not already on your radar screen, it's a great idea to become conscious of the speed by which you eat your food. And again, I know we live in a fast-paced world, and some days you feel like you have to just stuff just to get a meal in. But if you feel like you have to eat that way in order to get food in, you just need to not eat until you can make time. If it means you block out time in your schedule, you got to block out time in your schedule, because it's that important. And I'll repeat, if you're a keto or carnivore eater and you still have elevated blood sugar and you can't figure out why in the world you're not eating very many carbs, how in the world your blood sugar is going higher and staying higher, maybe it's how fast you're eating. And a deliberate slowing down of the eating might just help you. One practical approach that can be done for promoting slow eating is to try eating slowly at lunch while you're on break in school and workplace. However, in future studies, additional investigations are required to help us explain the mechanism of these effects and the long-term effects of eating speed on the metabolism with and without diabetes. So, in conclusion, to summarize, we have shown that eating fast is associated with higher daily glycemic excursions, postprandial glucose concentrations in a randomized controlled crossover trial for the first time. Real-world approaches are needed to better understand the negative influence of eating fast on your glycemic response and to support approaches for slowing down eating speed in healthy individuals. So if you're one of those teachers that's trying to help your clients get your blood sugar under control, if you're a diabetologist, if you're a medical doctor, or if you're a researcher, I hope this was fascinating information. Again, the name of the study, Eating Fast Has a Significant Impact on Glycemic Excursion in Healthy Women. A randomized controlled crossover trial was published in the September 10th, 2020 edition of the journal Nutrients. So go check it out, you guys. I thought you would find that quite interesting here today on Jimmy Rants. Let's come over here first now to my Instagram channel, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is a website, and as always, that's where you can support my work, either as a Patreon or through the PayPal link, JimmyRants.com. Thank you for your support. Beth has the first comment. I'm curious what they had them eat, because we all know, yeah, now you know, Beth. Rachel says, I grew up eating dinner with my family, and we were all talkers. We all eat slow, and if we're talking, but if I'm alone, I inhale the food. Maybe I should start talking to my dog when I eat. I have 2 cats and 14 chickens, Rachel, and if I start talking to them, they will call the loony bin on me, I promise. So, but that's not a bad idea. Maybe go on the phone call while you're eating. Hey, can I call you just so I can slow down my eating? And of course, it's kind of, yeah, so I'm having my meal tonight. I just needed somebody to help me slow down. Yeah, I don't know how that would go. You would have to have some very patient friends. I'll tell you what, Rachel, I can be your friends you call when you need to slow down your eating. So. All right. All right, thank you, Instagram. We're going to pop over now to my Facebook channel. What's up, Facebook? See what you guys have to say about this one. Kira says, I'm a fast eater and I always have been. The only thing that slowed down my eating was dinner with friends over a bottle of wine. But now no friends with COVID, especially no wine, being ketovore. Wah, wah. Yes, Tracy says, I have found that I was eating too fast, or when I eat too fast, I get sick, and I have electrolyte crashes. That's interesting. I'm trying to think what eating fast would do that would mess with your electrolytes. The only thing I can think of is the increase in the glucose going higher and faster. I don't know. I don't know why you would have that, but if that slows you down, then that's motivation to slow down. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here now to my YouTube channel, see what they have to say about this one. Good morning, everybody. I became a fast eater, says Anne, because the last person to finish dinner had to wash the dishes. Ooh, I had that as well. I didn't mind washing the dishes, so I didn't care if I finished last for that reason. Yeah. Harpsy says, girls eat slow, boys eat fast. Oh, no. I know lots of girls that eat fast. They can inhale, like Rachel said over here. She can inhale her food. So I don't think it runs along gender lines. Craig says, pro tip for eating slower, try using chopsticks. Yeah, I have done that before. I got frustrated and just started eating with my hands at that point. Or to eat with your opposite hand. Oh, that's interesting. So if you're right-handed, eat with your left hand. I like to eat without distractions. I find if I eat while watching TV, you just shovel it in. Yeah, it's mindless eating. Cat Dancer says, if I eat a large salad, it takes me 45 minutes, especially if I have something like steak or chicken with it. I'm a slow eater. On something like rice, I could speed up more easily, but other things, I've tried to swallow them before I felt ready. I would feel like I was about to choke. Yeah. Harpsy says, I heard from a keto doc on the internet, stomach stretching raises insulin. Yes, that was Dr. Richard Bernstein actually said that. Just the distension of the gut would have an insulin response. So you are exactly correct. PJB says, I got to work on chewing slower. We all do. We all do. Don't beat yourself up. It's something we all struggle with that are fast eaters. So hang in there. Harpsy says, great rant. I'm proud to support your work. Thank you for that. Deborah says, wouldn't the study have been better if the macros were the same for each meal? Well, it was the same for both study groups, so you definitely had apples to apples comparison. But I don't think having the exact same macros at every meal. And they were trying to see it not to see like which meal would have the greatest response versus which wouldn't. I think what they were looking at was what would a typical day look like. And most people eat most of their calories in a dinner meal. So that the fact that 40% of the calories were eaten in that last meal is not abnormal. A lot of people eat that way. Shirley says, I'm a slow eater, but not super slow. My husband just gobbles it all down. Yeah. He said that it was a race to get to the next steak. when he was growing up. Yeah, yeah, they did have, some had that kind of mentality of, if I didn't eat fast, I wouldn't get my seconds that they wanted. So that is true too. You know, I remember when I was a kid, we were always battling who got the last little scoop of macaroni and cheese, and that was my thing when we were growing up. And so, if you ate faster, you got 2 seconds faster, and then you could leave your siblings in the dust with the food that's no longer there. All right, thank you, YouTube. Let's pop back over now to my Instagram channel. Nice to find you on here. Well, thanks for being here, Kevy. So Heba, that is a general question, and I'll answer general questions on Fridays. I do this segment called Ask Me Anything, asking about how you get rid of glucose in your system from a meal. Ask that tomorrow. We will be back at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and I answer all kinds of general questions on Friday. So bring that question back with you tomorrow. Deborah says, what do you think about the new Jenny Craig? That's another one. Ask me tomorrow about the new Jenny Craig. They now offer a low carb and intermittent fasting protocol. Don't rant and yell. Be nice to me. Aren't I always nice? Well, and when do I yell? I know it's called Jimmy Rants, but it's literally, rant is just a word for somebody that's just talking about a subject. That's all rant means. Doesn't mean screaming and yelling. So bring that one back tomorrow as well. Great questions for Ask Me Anything. So come back tomorrow. I'm also going to post on my stories where you can put it in the little box, and then I'll read it on the air if you put it there. So thank you for those questions, and we will address those tomorrow. But guys, study says eating fast can play a significant role in your blood glucose, and it's interesting. And that's of healthy individuals eating high carb. And even people that eat keto and carnivore and relatively healthy and relatively real food, what impact, that have metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance and obesity and all the rest, what impact could it have? I say it's worth a shot testing. Slow down and see what happens. Test it for yourself. I would love it if somebody does this test using keto and carnivore meals, wearing a CGM, or even pricking your finger. I would love to see what results did you get when you slowed down to, say, 20 to 30 minutes to eat a meal versus trying to get it in really fast in 10 minutes. Do both of those tests on back-to-back days. It would be very fascinating to see what results you get. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me right here. I'm on Instagram at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thank you all for being here today. We simulcast over on my Facebook channel as well as YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay over here on Instagram on IGTV. We also put the replay up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Don't forget, today we have a Jimmy Rants bonus episode for you. Dr. Ben Tapper got a level of fame lately when a video of him speaking before the Omaha, Nebraska City Council went viral on the internet. So I was very honored to be able to speak with him about the masks and some of the lack of information about how people can be healthy in America. So go watch that video over on YouTube, or you can listen to it on my podcast called Real Talk over at llvlc.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And then finally, pop on over to the official website of Jimmy Rants. It's jimmyrants.com. And once you're there, you see all the past episodes, but most importantly, you can show your support for my work. There's a Patreon link where you can make a monthly donation, or you can do a one-time donation through the PayPal link. Again, all those links, you guys, are at jimmyrants.com. All right, guys, tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, it is Ask Me Anything. So get your questions ready. I will put a little box up on my stories on Instagram. If you want to type in your question into there, I will read it live on the air tomorrow. And then, of course, you can come here live. I love it when you come live. I like my replay people, but you guys that come live, you're the reason, you're the thing that gets me up every day to keep coming back every single day to do this show. So thank you for being here, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye. All right. 4 studies in 4 days. I don't think I've ever done that on Jimmy Rants in sequential order. I do studies all the time, but I usually just work them into the regular content. But I had so many of them. I thought, okay, we'll do 4 studies this week. And like I said, I've got a few smaller ones tomorrow that I think you'll find interesting. I like to kind of read the abstract of a lot of these smaller studies. Some of them you don't need to get into the nitty gritty. This was an interesting one to get to the nitty gritty of, but some of them you can just mention and say, oh, check out what they found. It's pretty cool. So, all right, guys, let me pop off of here for now. Thank you so much for being here today. I love getting to share with you, and I sincerely appreciate your presence here on my show. So thanks for being here today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Bye, YouTube.